Yo, what's going on, guys? Loon here, coming at you with an Arms Warrior PvP guide as of patch 5.4.8. Now, as always, keep in mind this is subject to change as of for every other patch expansion and balance tweaking, so on and so forth. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, you guys are probably a little shocked and surprised or a little puzzled that I actually have an Arms Warrior as well, and I don't just play a Ret Paladin, I actually do play an Arms Warrior, and I do have a 2200 achievement as well as the enchant, and so I thought I'd give you guys a pretty simple, nothing extremely professional, but if you're looking to just get started and be a pretty decent Arms Warrior, then I can definitely get you there, and you're in the right place. So without further ado, let's get started with our talents. First off, we're going to start off with Juggernaut. Now, pretty much this is standard and mandatory for every Arms Warrior to take, and it's self-explanatory. Your charge, you get a quicker charge every 12 seconds instead of every 20 seconds. Now, this is extremely important because it does have a gap closer, and well, let's just say you need to catch up to things that are ranged, because you can't hit the target if you're not next to him, right? So moving on to the level 30 talent. Again, another extremely mandatory talent, which is Second Wind. Whenever you're below 35% health, you regenerate 3% health every second. Now this pretty much makes you into Iron Man Juggernaut, which makes you awesomely tanky, especially when you're mixed together with a defensive stance and a die by the sword, as well as a shield wall. You're pretty much unstoppable when you're under 35% health, and it's usually a pretty good chance you're going to make it out if you have this up. Now, for 45 talents, it's not as important in my opinion. They're all pretty subpar to. It just depends on your threes comp kind of shout. I go with staggering shout because whenever I'm on a target and I don't particularly have maybe like a hunter or a DK that can root, I'll go for my staggering shout, which roots the target, but it may interrupt the effect, and it does DR with other roots. You could also go with piercing howl, mainly because it is a ranged slow, but personally I'm just fine with my hamstring as it's a faster global and it costs less rage. I mean, it just depends on your personal preference, and then I don't think anyone goes for disrupting shout, just mainly because if you do manage to use this and get a kick off, it does share a cooldown with pummel, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. If you already have an interrupt, why have another one that shares the same cooldown? And speaking of which, you won't really need two interrupts, because this brings us to our next talent, which is Shockwave. This is pretty much mandatory as well in threes, mainly because number one, it's a stun, number two, it's an AoE stun, and number three, it does damage, as well as have an opportunity to reduce its cooldown in half if you hit 3 or more targets, which if you're fighting anything that has a pet like a warlock or a hunter and they pop stampede, or maybe their demo, or they have anything really, like if you get a good amount of people in your shockwave, then it's a shorter cooldown, and that means you get to do it again and apply more pressure to your target. And moving on to our level 75 talent, which is another standard and mandatory one I like to go with, which is Safeguard. It does replace Intervene, but what happens is it's the same thing as Intervene. You charge to your target and they take reduced damage by 20%, but the big thing for us is that it removes roots and snares on us. So if you get rooted by a frost mage like a Frost Nova and you see a partner next to you, you can use a Safeguard on them and get out of that sucker real quick, so you can keep on your pressure and stay on that target as best as you can. And then our final talent, which will be Stormbolt. It's pretty much like Shockwave, except it's ranged, it does damage, and it is a awesome stun, especially if you're not on that target. So if you have a focus macro, let's say to a healer, and you're on maybe the hunter, so you'd stun the healer with this and get on the hunter, and then shockwave for that pressure, and then really start to wail on them with this. Now I know what you guys are probably thinking, like, why not go Avatar when you can just be this huge awesome monster that does extra damage and can take down your target with burst, because that's what threes is right now, is all about burst and pressure. But really you get more benefit from Stormbolt because it has a quicker cooldown. It still does damage, but the thing is to prevent heals on your target and to just disrupt your enemy team and to do as much damage as possible in that window of disruption. Now let's move on to our glyphs. I did a lot of research with this, and the best thing I could come up with from all the warriors I've looked up is most of the good warriors above maybe 2k to 2400 have these three talents, and I'll explain them right now. See, they're pretty much mandatory to have Death from Above, because the heroic leap cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds, and without it, it's a 45-second cooldown, and that's crazy long cooldown in threes, especially when every second counts. So 15 seconds off of your cooldown, making it a 30-second cooldown, that's pretty awesome, especially when your 4-set also supports this by increasing your movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds, which is a good opportunity to stay on your target and make sure they don't get away from you. Your next one will be Bull Rush, which is your charge generates a 15 additional rage. Now you're probably thinking, like, why do I need that extra rage if charge already generates a good maybe 20 rage? Well, see, if you're in defensive stance, you don't generate as much rage, meaning you don't do as much damage. So the upside to this is that when you have Bull Rush, you generate more rage even if you're in defensive stance. And then when you're in battle stance, you get even more rage. So that means you can spam more of your abilities. And your final one will be Glyph of Colossus Smash. Now, not as crazy crucial as the other ones, but the fun little bonus you get from it is it does apply Sunder Armor upon Colossus Smash application. So they have reduced armor on top of no armor on your Colossus Smash. Well, I'm sorry, 50%. And then it goes on from 6% on top of that, and stacking up to 3 times. And minor glyphs, I don't really care about that because this is my ult, and I guess the minor glyphs are more for funsies if you're into that kind of stuff. But let's go into our stats. See, what I gem for is mainly crit and PvP power if I can. Now you're probably thinking, like, why don't I just gem strength? See, we get more benefit from crit because of our little thing called Skull Banner and Recklessness. See, when I Skull Banner down, I get 20% more critical damage, meaning every time I crit, I do 20% more damage on top of the 100% value modifier I get from critting. Meaning if you have, and this also benefits your team with Skull Banner. So having more crit is always good because it's extra spiky damage goodness. And what you want to do is you want to go for greens like this, which is 160 crit rating and PvP power. If you're a Joecraft, you can put a Prismatic in there and put a 360 crit gem, kind of like what I did with my belt, which was a 320 critical strike belt. And when it has a socket bonus with the 60 strength, it's usually a bonus too. The enchants for a melee are usually the same, which is the strength and crit, the Pandaren step, and you'd mainly go for, just mainly crit, and your meta gem will be the 216 strength and 3% increased critical effect. Again, goes on top of your Skull Banner application and increasing your value modifiers from that. Same thing with every other enchant that you can think of. It's just the standard ones, nothing special. For the cloak, instead of going for haste, you do go for crit, which is an awesome bonus for arms warriors. It's awesome. And for our weapon, we do have that awesome Bloody Dancing Steel. Again, if you don't have it yet, because I know you're going to get it after this guide, you would go for a Dancing Steel because we don't need any weapon chains because, awesomely enough, our 2-set has it built in, which is awesome. And then you can go for the Trinket with the crit, and then I like to go for this one that has the on the automatic proc, which is better in my opinion because it's more pressure that's randomized rather than setting up one final hit for burst when you can just get CC'd and your whole thing kind of goes to crap. And our secondary stat hierarchy goes like this. You're gonna have crit first, mastery. Oh, sorry. You'd go for mastery first, crit, and then haste. Haste is kind of a useless stat for us. We don't really benefit at all from it other than making our auto attacks a little bit faster. So it goes from you reforge for mastery, you gem for crit, and you kind of leave haste alone. And make sure you keep your hit at 3% to make sure you're able to hit level 90 targets, which of course is a PvP target. Expertise, I'm pretty sure doesn't matter because there's a lot of stuff like Die by the Sword, which makes your parry chance 100%, and you can't really get through 100% parry chance. And after all of that, this is pretty much all of the technical stuff you need with your talents, glyphs, and general stats that you'll need to be an effective arms warrior as of patch 5.4.8. Now, I do have a part 2 coming up. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. This is Loon here, signing off. You guys have a good one. Okay.